but
all right. Go live. It's okay.
I think we're live.
Oh, we are live. Oh,
Yeah.
awkward. Oh, and why isn't the intro going? Oh, okay. That's not the intro. That's why. Sorry, guys. Here.
Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Pod.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, guys, Coach Steve. You can't see my beautiful face tonight, unfortunately. I don't have my camera with me on the road today, but don't worry, Coach Tyler and his face is here today. What's going on, Coach Tyler?
What's up, guys? If you played anyone in week one, I'm sorry. There's a good chance you were disappointed. So hopefully week 2 is better. Hopefully we get off to a better start tonight with this good Thursday night game.
Absolutely, yeah. Thursday night football, Bills, Dolphins. My Dolphins are on TV tonight. Great to watch a nice Dolphins game on a Thursday night. But we have so much to talk about today, guys, and we're going to kind of go through the same process as we did last week here. If you remember correctly, we're going to go through every single team, talk about some of the important players and whether or not they are startable players for your fantasy roster in week 2 here. So we're going to get right into that now, and we'll talk about some of the injured players as we go, as I go through my list here, because there's a lot of injury players who have not played. And if you're watching as of right now, Devon A-Chain is still supposed to be playing tonight, so keep that in mind. So hello, Albert. How are you? Thank you for joining in tonight's show here. Let me just pull up my screen here to a little bit more so people can actually see it. It looks a little bit better here. Maybe if we do it like this. Nope, don't like that at all. We're going to do it like this. All right, perfect here. So, guys, we're going to start with the first game of the night here. The New Orleans Saints versus the Dallas Cowboys here. So let's get some certain players out of the way early. Obviously, I think you're okay getting Dak back in your starting lineup with CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, like, you're just going to start these players pretty easily. Alvin Kamara, you're going to go back to him here. In terms of the rest of the guys, I mean, that's really all the guys I have, unfortunately, Tyler, for the must start. So let's go to an important player like Chris Olave. Bad week last week in a matchup where they kind of blew out the Panthers. They didn't technically need him, but Dallas has a pretty stacked team as we saw in week 1 here. Where are you at with Chris Olave?
Yeah, I feel like kind of going into what we talked about a lot last week, just in terms of draft capital, where you drafted Chris Olave, you kind of have to start him unless you just really have some nice pieces on your bench. But yeah, last week was disappointing, and Dallas is, I would say, a lot more difficult of a defense than Carolina. I think that's kind of the consensus view on that. But, the Saints are going to be behind in this game, and I think it's going to force them to throw the ball more. Derek Carr threw the ball 23 times last week. He's going to have to, possibly double that number to even go through this game. I don't think they'll make it overly competitive, but they're going to be behind a lot more. They're not going to be blowing the Cowboys out of the water. And if they do, then I'd be genuinely surprised. But they're going to have to throw the ball. Shaheed did look good, caught that deep touchdown last week. But Olave's he's the number one. He's the guy. I feel like you have to start him until we see too much of a trend of these, low scoring games.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it. I mean, Olave, he was a guy who was boom and bust every single week anyway, so you kind of just have to go back to him unless you have great bench players to kind of go after. So Olave should be in starting lineups this week here. Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just going to put the Dallas Cowboys players as a sit this week. What we saw last week in a blowout game did not look pretty. This could be a blowout game for the Cowboys in their favor, potentially once again, maybe. But the running back core was so split down the middle, and no one seemed to be running the ball at all. You kind of just off them this week?
Yeah, Zeke would be the one that I would go for. He was the one back out of this backfield that everyone expected to be the red zone guy. We saw that last week. He fell into the end zone, if I remember it right. Yeah, had that rushing touchdown last week. So in a game where the Cowboys could very frequently be in the red zone, if you were throwing one of them out, it would be Zeke just because of those red zone touches, that touchdown potential. But I'm not overly excited to start either of the running backs, or really any of the running backs if you want to throw Deuce Vaughn in there. New Orleans doesn't have a terrible run defense. They're fairly good. But at the same time, you need Zeke to fall into the end zone to have what would be considered good week for him at this point. But yeah, I'm sitting all the Dallas running backs if I have other options.
Great. I like it. All right. And again, just some of the guys on the fence real quick before we move on here. Rashard Rashid and Brandon Cooks, I think they're kind of like boomer bust players. Like they probably need a touchdown to have a fantasy day. So if you're flexing them, hoping they have a boom week here. But again, they're really risky players. Saints tight ends, Jawan Johnson and Taysom Hill. We saw the tight ends for the Browns last week do somewhat decent. So, it could be interesting for them. And, I forgot one player real quick here. Jake Ferguson may or may not play. I think he practiced, or he didn't practice today, if I'm not mistaken here. I think he's still a player that I probably would just sit just coming off that injury.
He didn't practice today. Didn't practice yesterday. But yeah, he's a guy. They escaped, major injury with him coming out of last week. They said that there was even a possibility he plays this week, but I don't really want to risk that if I have other options at tight end that I can go. And again, I feel like this is going to be a very high scoring game for Dallas, almost somewhat reminiscent of what last week was. And so I feel like they're not going to have to throw the ball a ton.
Yeah. I mean, again, they're a team that's like, touchdowns kind of interesting for the Cowboys tight ends, but it'd be really hard to want to start them, especially with Jake Ferguson coming off an injury and Luke Schoonmaker, if he does happen to start, really having no history of producing in the NFL yet. So next game, pretty fun game here. Bucks, Lions, Buccaneers, Lions. Bucks lost a lot of people in their secondary. So like players this week, like Jared Goff should be able to have a bounce back week here. You should be able to start the Lions RBs this week here. They were really solid last week, even though Dave Montgomery wasn't that great until late in the game. Jump back on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Obviously, have Sam Laporta as a starter. I'm sorry, Todd. I'm just kind of going through everyone real quick.
No, you're good.
Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I mean, those guys are pretty much must-start players. Rashard White. He should continue to see the workload, even though Bucky Irving, and we'll talk about him in a second, had some really good work in this game here. Am I missing someone? Is Baker a must-start for you?
Baker, yeah. I think this is going to be a lot closer game than most people think. I think it has, high shootout potential. So really, if you want to make it real concise, start everyone that you have for Detroit and then start all the viable starters for Tampa Bay. I think it's going to be a shootout game. I think it's going to be really fun. We still get Jared Goff inside the home dome. Obviously didn't work out too well for him last week. Didn't start the season hot. But like you said, it's a good bounce back area for him. Both Detroit running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs didn't look hampered by that hamstring. That was kind of a fear coming into the season. David Montgomery, the clock turned to overtime and something flipped. He flipped that switch and something happened to him.
Late game.
Yeah, it was great. St. Brown, bounce back week. Honestly, just because of the shootout potential that I see, I'm tempted to throw Jameson Williams in the starts. Yeah, I'm tempted to throw Jameson Williams in the starts.
He missed practice today or was limited, so keep that in mind. But if he does play Jameson, I don't know why I can't spell Jameson. He should be a guy that you should watch out for. But yeah, I think you're right. Upside to potentially play him makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the big thing that following Jameson Williams was the coaching staff for the Lions just constantly talking about wanting to get him involved, giving him a bigger role. And we did see that this past week. Obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't eating up the targets like he usually does, but still a 9-target game and then another, end around jet sweep to him coming out of the backfield. Like we saw the deep play potential from Jameson Williams, exactly what we thought he was going to be. And, he ended up with a wide receiver 5 week in full PPR leagues. And so if he's healthy, I'm starting him. I'm hoping that he catches a long bomb and good things happen.
That's what the goal is. Hopefully, he continues to have that upside in targets and play the playing snap that he has shown in week 1. Bucky Irving, I have him kind of as a sit still. Like I'm not trusting him. Oh, I went on actually too quickly. But Bucky Irving, if you saw him have 60 yards last week, the Lions front 7 is pretty strong here, and they'll make a menace of stopping the Bucs run game from being very successful unless it's through the passing game. So he's not in starting territory yet, but it was a really positive outlook to see what he was able to do in week 1. So over the next game here, Indianapolis Colts, Green Bay Packers. Tyler, I'll let you run through the list. What players are automatic starts? You just got to name out there.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson, obviously Jonathan Taylor. I know Jonathan Taylor didn't have the greatest game last week, but this is a Green Bay team that allowed Saquon Barkley to go for 3 total touchdowns against them and put up a great fantasy week. I think either way, A-Rich and Jonathan Taylor are going to be must starts. I don't know if I would put any of the Colts receivers as must starts.
Ooh.
Honestly, I'd put Pittman and Alec Pierce on the fence. Pierce, we saw the downfield play that really was his game, was what he was supposed to do. And that was on full display last week. If Anthony Richardson's going to lean off that back foot and chuck it, he's going to find Alec Pierce. But Michael Pittman is supposed to be the wide receiver 1 leader of this offense. 4 receptions on 8 targets for 31 yards, no touchdowns. And, Michael Pittman plays in that shorter to intermediate area where Anthony Richardson's accuracy has been really the question mark. And so I like Alec Pierce because he's going to throw it downfield. I want to see more of Alec Pierce doing it before I, put him in a start area. But yeah, I think the list is perfect right there. You've got the 2 rushers in the start area. You've got the 2 wide receivers, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 on the fence, and then everyone else for Indy is a sit or avoid. And then Green Bay, Josh Jacobs is really the only must start for me in Green Bay.
That's fair. I like it.
I don't know what this offense is going to look like with Malik Willis. It's not like when he was with the Titans and he just knew the system and he had to come in as the backup for a couple games. This is him. He was traded 3 weeks ago, if I remember right, 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So he's still pretty new to this system. If you think of how an NFL offense works week to week, luckily he does know the Colts and their defense pretty well, but I just don't know. It was hard enough to figure out what the receivers looked like for Green Bay with Jordan Love out there. I think it's going to be even harder to figure it out, at least this first week with Malik Willis. So really the only must start for me is Josh Jacobs. His role doesn't really change. And if anything, it becomes more increased because they'll have to depend on that ground game more.
That's fair. I like that. Yeah, Josh Jacobs is really only must start. Emmanuel Wilson is definitely interesting in like deeper leagues. We saw how much the Colts gave up in terms of rushing. If they happen to, kind of give Josh Jacobs a break at time, Emmanuel Wilson had like 40 yards last week on 6 carries. So he could be interesting sleeper this week, deep sleeper. Like I said, you mentioned that Josh Jacobs the only must start. The wide receivers, you kind of just playing like Russian roulette. Again, Jaden Reed probably the most strongest option potentially still, but again, I think it could be anyone's game with Malik Willis and the Packers tight ends. You kind of just want to wait another week and see how that kind of develops. I know it was Tucker Kraft in week 1, but it might change in week 2. We'll have to wait and see, but I think I'd give it one more week before we consider any Packers tight end as a must-start option, especially if Luke Musgrave has kind of fallen out of favor. It looks like it. So over to the New York Jets and the Tennessee Titans here. I'll make this one pretty quick here. Garrett Wilson, guys. Obviously, you can continue to start him as a must-start player. Breece Hall, obviously, looked like a beast in week 1, even though he fumbled the ball and had to probably hurt people that way. I'm saying Tony Pollard personally. The Jets, we saw the Jets get destroyed on the ground here, and Tony Pollard had a really good week 1. Those are the only 3 that I'm truly considering as must-start options. How do you feel about like Calvin Ridley? Do you have him as a must start as a player that you're starting, or is he?
No, I have him still on the fence. We didn't get to see a ton from the Titans offense because really the Chicago defense was just destroying them. But 3 receptions on 7 targets for 50 yards. He's still playing that downfield role. But this Jets secondary is just so good. We saw them, somewhat limit the San Francisco pass attack, which made them lean on Jordan Mason more, which we'll get to him later. But yeah, this secondary is just so good that I wouldn't necessarily trust Will Levis and his potential to go crazy in terms of yards or passing touchdowns this game. So I think it is going to be a ground and pound game. And then with the Jets, we saw Aaron Rodgers didn't look outstanding in his return. So I think this game is just going to be straight on the ground. Garrett Wilson is going to get the ball across, like on the sideline over the middle a couple times, make his fantasy managers at least decently happy. But I think it's going to be between Brees and Pollard on who's going to win these teams this game.
That's fair. I like that. Like I said, Ridley is just a flexible option. I'm not super excited to start him this week. Tajay Spears, sleeper if they decide to run the ball more and more. Quarterbacks you're sitting. Any other wide receiver outside of Wilson and Ridley, I'm not really trusting at this moment. The tight ends are interesting. I'd like to see what they do in another week here. I mean, Chico Conquo had a touchdown last week. Maybe he's more involved. Tyler Conklin, I was expecting more, but he had a really bad week. Maybe this is a different week that he can actually maybe step up. But yeah, this is not a fantasy relevant game, unfortunately, for a lot of people here. But this one might be here. San Francisco 49ers here. Do you want to run through the must start players real quick here on this one?
Yeah, so we'll start with San Francisco. Starting Brock Purdy. I think that Minnesota, if Darnold can look like he did this past week, I think San Francisco is going to have to throw the ball a good amount. Brandon Ayuk, Debo, starting both of them. Christian McCaffrey, if he's out there, I'm starting him. If he's not out there, I'm starting Jordan Mason because Jordan Mason looked outstanding last week. We're going to start George Kittle. He's just a tight end that you love. He's a guy, didn't have the most outstanding statistical week, 440 last week. But really the San Francisco offense, you stick to your guns with those guys, and it's just the question of which running back is playing in this game. Sure. Minnesota, I'm going to go Justin Jefferson, and honestly, I feel like Aaron Jones is a must start.
All right, I like it.
He did play against a bad Giants defense last week, but averaged 6.7 yards a carry, 94 yards and a touchdown, and then had a couple receptions out of the backfield. But he looked good. He looked, I wouldn't say like vintage Aaron Jones, but he looked a lot better than I expected him to look. And the San Francisco defense obviously is no joke. They're no New York Giants defense to go through. But with Sam Darnold and how well he played in a balanced offense, only 24 attempts last week, we saw a lot of balance in how O'Connell called the game, and I think they're going to need to solidify that running game if they want to have any chance of competing. So I'm going to keep Jones there. Addison, I'm going to stick him on the fence. Still haven't seen him at practice this week, which isn't a great sign coming in, dealing with that ankle injury. But I'm going to have him on the fence until I see a lot out of him. 3 for 35 last week. Nothing spectacular, sort of what we expected, even if Darnold is having a good game. And then Ty Chandler, I'm going to put him – honestly, I was going to put him kind of on the fence, just see how much they needed to run the ball this game. Not overly efficient, but did have, one more target, one more reception than Aaron Jones out of the backfield. Aaron Jones isn't a young running back, so I feel like they're going to split those backfield touches between Aaron Jones with the rushing, and Ty Chandler is slowly going to increase that receiving workload.
I like it. I like the breakdown there. Kind of be cool if I think we're going to try to go back and forth to see how that works here. Let's see. All right. Over the next game here, guys, Seattle Seahawks versus the New England Patriots. Seattle has to travel all the way across the East, which could be a recipe for disaster, unfortunately. But In terms of startable players in this game, I think Ramondre Stevenson showed that he can run the ball very well, and he's going to be the main guy and the main target in this offense. So I'm going to say Ramondre Stevenson. If Kenneth Walker plays, Kenneth Walker is going to continue to be a must start. And if not, I think Zach Charbonnet, if there's no Ken Walker, who hasn't been practicing this week, if no Walker. So like that's and then it's really tough to trust anyone else personally as a complete like faithfully must start player. Like DK Metcalf, you could consider a must start, but he's got a tough matchup there against the second year wide receiver Christian Gonzalez there. So I'm a little concerned on that. Like, are the target shares going to be the same for Lockett and JSN? Like, they're guys that are kind of on the fence for me this week here because I just don't know how much I trust them overall to be able to produce or see the target share that we want in this matchup here. So I'm a little concerned with them, but most than likely these guys are all flexible players for you this week, but they do come all with some risk. You're going to sit Jacoby Brissett. I'm probably sitting Geno Smith. He didn't look that great. I was kind of disappointed in a favorable matchup last week out of him. The rushing touchdown saved his day. In terms of like the rest of it, like probably going to sit Noah Fant. Like he's really not a startable asset right now. Like I'm not starting Hunter Henry, who got not outplayed, but outproduced by Austin Hooper last week here. Still, I'm not going to trust any of the New England Patriots wide receivers at this moment. DeMar Douglas was a guy I thought maybe he could be a flexible option every single week for us in fantasy, but the poor performance he put up in week 1, it's hard to trust. So I'm going to sit any New England wide receiver at this moment. So any discrepancy there from you?
Not at all. That's exactly how I see it. Geno was very disappointing. In my mind, I thought the Washington OC coming over and taking over OC duties under the new regime there in Seattle was going to mean they're going to air the ball out. And it was just the exact opposite of that. And they leaned on the run game so heavily. Until we see true play calling, true change in that offense, the Seattle receivers are going to be on the fence. And Geno, as long as he doesn't look as bad as he did last week, might move his way up there.
I like it. All right. Over to the New York Giants and the Washington Commanders. This could be the stupid high-scoring game at fantasy relevant players because how bad both defenses are. But Tyler, you want to run through the auto starts first on these guys?
Yeah. So for Washington, we're going to auto start Jaden Daniels. We said last week we're going to wait and see for week 1 of rookie year. And he didn't have an outstanding passing game, 184 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. So it wasn't terrible. But he did exactly what you drafted him to do and ran for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Tampa Bay defense. That was pretty good. So I think that those numbers, at least rushing wise, he might lose a touchdown, might throw for the touchdown instead. But I think they're going to be about the exact same. Really, Brian Robinson for the Commanders. We wanted to see him go out and be the one for this offense, and went out there, 40 rushing yards and a touchdown, and then 4 targets out of the backfield, 3 receptions for 49 yards. Not the most outstanding day, 17.9 PPR points. We like to see it. But really, just because of the lack of passing from Jaden Daniels this past week, I'm going to put McLaurin on the fence. Even if there is the shootout ability in this game, I just haven't seen enough from Jaden Daniels passing wise to trust Terry McLaurin to go out there and do a ton. So I have Terry McLaurin on the fence. So must starts for Washington, Jaden Daniels, Brian Robinson. Must starts for New York. I got to go Malik Neighbors. He's going to be the target monster, even if Wan'Dale Robinson had the great target game. 5 receptions, 66 yards. Devin Singletary, just because the Washington defense is actual Swiss cheese, I'm going to start Devin Singletary. And then Wan'Dale Robinson, I'm going to put him on the fence. Did see 12 targets this past week, but only converted that to 6 receptions for 44 yards. So I'm going to put Wan'Dale on the fence just because if he continues that target share, you almost have to start him in case Daniel Jones actually makes the ball catchable. But until I see it consistently, that might just be a fluke game to me.
All right, I like it. I like it. Yeah, I mean, outside of that, I think Daniel Jones, how bad he was last week, he has have a good history against the Washington Commanders. So I wouldn't be surprised if you happen to have to go back to him again, even though it's probably really rare that you're going to do something like that. Luke McCaffrey is someone that I have as like a deep sleeper personally. Just because he was seeing targets in last week's game there. I know it was kind of probably most of it was in somewhat of a garbage time situation there, but there is potential for him to maybe see work in this game if this does turn into a stupid high scoring game here. Probably going to sit all tight ends just because I just don't know exactly how that outlook is going to go. And I mean, that's really it for this game here. So that was a pretty good job there, Tyler. All right, over to the next game here, the Los Angeles Chargers and the Carolina Panthers. Now, this game is going to be really interesting here. Pretty much the easiest must start is J.K. Dobbins coming off on a 130-yard game last week and a touchdown. I think Gus Edwards is good enough in this game here to start if you need to. I know he didn't perform as well in week 1, but he should continue to see the workload in this game here. I'll trust Justin Herbert. You know, like he didn't play well last week, and this might be a trap game for him just because the running game is going to do so well against this Panthers defense here. But Herbert's an okay trust. On the fence, I mean, Lad McConkey, like he had a decent game last week. I'll put him there. Josh Palmer could have caught a touchdown. He'll kind of go on that fenceable range there. Hayden Hurst has some upside in a game where we saw the New Orleans Saints tight ends actually do well last week against Carolina. He might actually have himself a decent week that you could kind of go after. You know, you could run back to Deontay Johnson, but it is a little scary there, honestly, right now. Chuba Hubbard is maybe a okay RB3. But, I mean, anyone else from the Panthers, like Young, you're sitting, like, I know Thielen was the leader last week, but I'm going to go back to sitting Thielen still. I'm not trusting him. Xavier Leggett, like, not trusting that. Quentin Johnston. Yeah, I mean, I think he led the team in targets, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not trusting him in this matchup either. The Panthers tight ends, yeah, like, they're not being trusted. Anyone else that you disagree with maybe here or agree with that I'm missing?
No one that you're missing. Definitely think that the run game, I think the Chargers are going to be able to get up quick and easy with the run game, and then they're just going to run out the clock. This is going to be a vintage hardball play calling game. I think, like you said, Gus and JK both have the opportunity to be viable. We did see JK Dobbins. We saw kind of that, I don't know if it was the Achilles kicking back in or if it was just lack of conditioning. But we saw J.K. Dobbins. He had a couple long runs, but once he got past around the 20, 25-yard mark, he slowed down dramatically. So we might see Gus out there for a couple more carries, depending on how often they're trying to run through J.K. Dobbins.
Awesome. All right, over to the next games here. Cleveland Browns versus the Jacksonville Jaguars in Trevor. I think the Jaguars stadium is called Everbank, and they're calling it Trevor Bank. Stadium for the weekend to promote, I guess, the Jags home opener. So what do we feel about this game, or who are the most starts in this game?
So because it's going to be such a high pressure game for Trevor with his name on the stadium, you got to sit him, right?
Oh, sit him?
No. We're gonna start Trevor Lawrence. Cleveland's defense didn't do a ton against the pass last week against the Cowboys, which gives me hope for what Lawrence is able to go out there and do. You know, didn't have really a great game against Miami. Only 12 for 21 for 162 and 1. But that one went to my guy, Brian Thomas Jr., who I am going to start this week. I think the focus is going to be on the interior with Christian Kirk. I think the focus is going to be on stopping the run with Travis Etienne. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be able to sneak back behind that secondary and go score us a long touchdown and get us a highlight. He did look really good. Had a long touchdown pass. I think it was about 30-yard, 40-yard touchdown pass that was negated, or not negated. He dropped the ball on a pass interference because he burned Jalen Ramsey. And then all his other targets, he was, outside of the drag, which obviously you're going to be wide open on that. Brian Thomas really did look good, and we saw him sneak in the back of the end zone last week. Trevor Lawrence found him back there, floated that ball in perfectly. But I'm starting Brian Thomas. It may just be my excitement for him and seeing him go out and score a touchdown in week 1. But I'm going to start Brian Thomas. I'm going
We
to
do have a
start.
question in the chat, though, real quick, Tyler.
What's up,
From
Parker?
Parker. If A-Chain doesn't play, should I start? Well, A-Chain's probably going to get on the field tonight. He may not be 100% Parker, but do you go Devin Singletary or Jeff Wilson? Let's say A-Chain is a last-minute scratch. Do you start Singletary or Jeff Wilson?
I'm gonna have to say Singletary on that.
That's fair.
I like,
that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I'd probably go Jeff Wilson personally, but I respect the Singletary love there.
Yeah, I think Singletary's just playing against a lot easier defense, and so if you gave me, the promise of 15 carries for both of them, I would think Singletary has a better day than Wilson just because of the defensive matchup.
That's fair. That's fair. What about if A-Chain plays? Is it still? I mean, obviously it's still Singletary for you, but I guess for me on my end there, I would probably lean slightly towards Singletary. I think Jeff Wilson will need a touchdown, Parker, to actually have a fantasy relevant day. Like I could see him having 12 carries for 65 yards at best, and then that's it. If he doesn't score that touchdown, that's what you're getting. Which I think Singletary, like Tyler just said, with Washington's how bad their run defense is, he should be able to see more work and potentially have a better outcome game, especially if any half-point scoring or better for reception leagues if you're in one.
Yeah, if A-Chain plays, I'm playing him. I don't think that Miami would be dumb enough to put him in a game if he's not ready to go. At least ready enough to go against a Bills defense that isn't terrible on prime time. You don't want to see something major happen to one of your star players. And so if he's going, I'm starting him. If not, give me Singletary in that situation.
That's fair. All right, so back to this game here. Browns, Jags. Where else are we here with must starts? We have Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr.
Brian Thomas Jr. I'm going to throw Travis Etienne still in there. We did see Tank Bigsby come out and pull some workload, which is what everyone thought would happen last year. So it's really crazy that we were just all a year late on it. But, 12 carries for 44 yards. He wasn't overly efficient, but he is going to be a lot of what this offense runs through, especially if they want to push the ball downfield. They're going to need a lot of that play action. So I think they're going to continue to feed Travis Etienne, really kind of force him the ball. So on volume alone, I think he's going to be okay. Evan Ingram, we did see the tight ends have some success for Dallas last week before Ferguson got hurt. 1 reception for 5 yards against Miami. It wasn't a great game, great bounce back opportunity for Ingram. But for Cleveland, I'm going to start Jerome Ford.
You have to.
And I'm either on the fence or sitting about everyone else.
Amari Cooper too?
I'm on the fence about Amari Cooper just because of how obviously he played against a good Dallas secondary, but just because of how bad Deshaun Watson looked last week, I don't know that I want to play any of these Browns receivers. I'm on the fence about Amari because if it's going to be anyone, it's going to be him. But I don't know that I want to play any of these Browns receivers, putting trust in the fact that Watson's going to be able to actually get them the ball.
That's fair. I mean, I respect. I think I'm okay starting Amari Cooper. He saw the target share. I'm okay with that. If he continues to see 9 targets, have a better game this week. I'll agree with everything else. Sean Watson, I don't want to play. I know Jerry Jeudy caught that touchdown, but I'm not really trying to start Jerry Jeudy. Cleveland doesn't have a tight end with David Njoku out. Gabe Davis led the team in reception yards, but still going to sit him. I need to see another week before I consider him any trusting flexible option. And Tank Bigsby, he had the yardage, but again, Cleveland still has a good front seven. I'm not overly trying to get through that. So, but the rest of it I agree with. I think got a great breakdown there in terms of these two teams. So, all right, over to the next game here. Las Vegas Raiders and Baltimore Ravens here. So this one's pretty easy. You start Lamar Jackson. I'm going to start Derrick Henry still. I think he'll be fine. He's a little scary for season long, but in this game he should have a pretty decent matchup. I'll go back to Mark Andrews. I'm okay starting Mark Andrews here. If you need to take a shot on Isaiah Likely, I'm willing to take the shot. But again, just so you know, Mark Andrews had double coverage on him literally all night. It was the game plan for the Chiefs to take him out of the game. So they went to Isaiah Likely to use him in that situation as a weapon because he wasn't being guarded like Mark Andrews was. So just if you take your expectation and lower it a bit with Isaiah Likely, but because the tight end landscape, if he gets 4 receptions for 45 yards, that's probably a tight end 1. And because of how bad the tight ends play this year, you take your shot with Isaiah Likely. I think you should be fine with a Zay Flowers in this game here because he saw so many targets. I'm hoping that there can be more air yards for him in week 2. Again, he only had 37 yards last week, so I'm hoping that can kind of increase, but he had 10 targets. In terms of the Raiders, Devontae Adams, I think you start Devontae Adams still. I'm okay going back to Brock Bowers. He showed some potential, and I'm okay starting him. If he's your starting tight end, you just roll with him right now. Jacoby Myers, I'm on the fence with him. He's fine. I'm not gotta start him, but he showed some interestingness last week there in his matchup there. I'd be interested to see how well he does this week here. Outside of that, I'm not overly wanting to start anyone else. To be honest, Zamir White, don't want to start him. Alexander Madison is interesting because he's a big waiver pickup this week, but I don't think I want to start him. Minshew, I don't want to go near. Rashard Bateman, he had that one great catch, and that was really it for him. I don't know how you feel about anyone else in this game. I don't know how you feel about this breakdown here.
Yeah. Really, I'm on the fence about Justice Hill. We saw him come in for.
You're right.
Saw him come in for all 2-minute drill, all all really pass plays, and it obviously is going to favor more in negative game scripts for Baltimore, which there's not going to be a ton of those. But like we saw for Kansas City, he had 8 targets out of the backfield. So he's a guy I'm on the fence about. Obviously against the Raiders, I think the Ravens kind of steamroll this game, so we probably won't see a ton of him. But we've got, over the next couple weeks after that, we've got at Dallas, Buffalo, and at Cincinnati. So if Cincinnati can figure out their offense, if Buffalo can figure out their pass game, I think that there's a chance that Justice Hill is a guy that you're looking at in your flex spots just for the fact of he's going to get all of the dump offs. And then I like starting both Andrews and Likely. In one of my very important dynasty leagues to me, I have both Andrews and Likely. I made the wrong decision somehow for last week, but the Ravens play so much 12 personnel. I've heard a lot of people sort of relate this to the Ravens are going to be the new Patriots from back when they had Gronk and they had Aaron Hernandez, where they're going to be in 12 personnel a good amount just because they don't have the receivers to really not be, and their tight ends are so good that you have to play them. And so I do think this is a big bounce back game for Andrews, and I think Likely does take a little bit of a step back, but I don't think that he loses involvement. I don't think he has the weeks consistently that he had this past week. Just a lot of dump off passes. But if you're in tight end premium league, that works extremely well for you because you get those reception bonuses.
Of course, absolutely. Next game here, Raiders and Cardinals. Give us the must starts here real quick here, Tyler.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp, easy. No Puka, Cooper Kupp of coffee. He's going to be back to the number 1 receiver that he should have been. And we saw him healthy, put up, obviously Puka left, but still put up 14 receptions on 21 targets. And he was on a very good pace to do that while Puka was still in the game. So Cooper Kupp, I think as long as he's healthy, he's back to his normal ways, back to a must start. Kyren, he's going to be a must start just because obviously this is a divisional matchup and those are a lot closer than they should be. But I do think that the Rams take it a little bit easier. And so Kyren, he's going to be out there 50 yards and a touchdown this past week on 18 carries, 3 targets, 3 receptions. So he's still getting the workload, the volume that you expected. And then for the Cardinals, I'm going to start Kyler. The Rams secondary wasn't outstandingly crazy. I'm going to start Kyler, and I'm going to start James Conner. James Conner had the volume all last week, 16 carries, 4 targets, 50 yards and a touchdown on the ground, 3 receptions for 33 yards through the air. James Conner looked like a bell cow. He played like a bell cow, and I think that he is going to continue to be the lifeblood of this offense for the Cardinals as long as Kyler is still figuring out how to throw a ball to Marvin Harrison. Because once he figures that out, it's going to be all about the air. And I think Trey McBride does see a little bit of a bounce back game. I do think the Cardinals are going to have to throw the ball more. Still saw 9 targets this past week, but only turned it into 5 receptions for 30 yards. So nothing, outstanding statistically, but we still see the target share. I think he accounted for a third of the Cardinals' targets. I'm going to go on the fence about Marvin just because, we only saw 3 targets for him, and Kyler Murray in his post-game presser or his post-practice presser yesterday said that it's not his job to get Marvin Harrison the ball.
It's true.
So, which really it is, because I don't know why they're paying him all that money and drafting a top receiver, top 5 in the NFL draft if you aren't going to get him the ball. But Marvin, we want to see more. We want to see Kyler actually commit to getting him the ball. And for the Rams, I am intrigued to see what the target share looks like for both Demarcus Robinson and Colby Parkinson. I'm going to put them on the fence, just seeing what No Puka does if the Demarcus Robinson steps up as that wide receiver 2. We did see the Rams sort of lean on Colby Parkinson, 5 targets, 4 for 47, just actually playing a tight end well in the McVay offense, which they usually do. So that's sort of where I'm at, starts and on the fence, and then everyone else is fairly sittable to me.
Did you say Matthew Stafford was on the fence?
I'll put Stafford on the fence.
All right, I'll put him on the fence for you.
I'll go on the fence.
I think he's a star, but I like it.
I mean, we saw in a 4-point passing touchdown scoring system, he had 49 pass attempts last week and only put up 15.68 points. And I don't think they throw the ball that much against Arizona. Hopefully it's a little bit more efficient. But, if you're telling me a guy is going to go out there and throw for almost 50 pass attempts a game and he's not going to break 16 points, I'm not overly excited to put him in my starting lineup.
That's fair. All right, over the next game here, Pittsburgh Steelers, Denver Broncos here. This one's pretty tough here because I really don't want to start many people here. I think George Pickens might be the only one I think is considered maybe a must start. Maybe Najee Harris. I'm okay with Najee with the workload that he received, but outside of that, there's no one else I really want to truly start. Like Justin Fields is starting again. Obviously, we already mentioned that early in the week here. He's on the fence for me personally. As long as he gets the rushing upside, he's fine. But that is a little scary for me that, his passing numbers weren't that great, but his rushing was. So he just has to continue to do that. But I don't think he's a must-start player. Pat Freiermuth, I'm okay starting him as a tight end just because of the position. And he's so second in the team in terms of targets on the field. Outside of that, like the Broncos team, like I don't want to start them. Like I am going to say the Broncos team as a sit. Like I don't want to start Javonte Williams. Him and Jalen McLaughlin split way too much time in week 1, and he fumbled the ball at one point. Bo Nix, not great. Hopefully improved, but this is a tough Steelers defense here. None of the wide receivers were really like strong. Like I think Devon Veal had like 8 catches for 37 yards. Like that's like fun, but like it's not worthy starting him. Cortland Sutton didn't have a great week here. The tight ends for the Broncos were kind of just a mishmash. I guess Jalen Warren is kind of more on the fence. Hopefully kind of bounces back this week after a poor week 1. I mean, I think he's still banged up, and I'm not overly excited to start him. But again, hopefully he does see more work in week 2 that he makes you turns into a player that you do want to start again. Anyone else here?
Honestly, I'm putting George Pickens on the fence.
Okay.
I am a well-known George Pickens hater, but also there's one receiving option in this offense, and Denver just happens to have one of the best corners in the league at Pat Surtain. So I think Pat Surtain is –
You're right.
I think he's shadowing him the entire game, and I don't trust Justin Fields to put it on him accurately enough times in the game to really make him a must-start player in my eyes. But outside of that, I agree with everything he got here.
All right, I respect it here. All right, let's go to the next game here. Cincinnati Bengals and Kansas City Chiefs here. Where do we stand with the must-start players here? Who are they?
So we're gonna start Patrick Mahomes. He likes to show up against Cincinnati. I gotta go Travis Kelce. Last week I think it was a fluke game, only 4 targets, which was really weird. But we also saw Mark Andrews have like 3 or 4 targets. So we're just gonna chalk that up to week 1 being crazy. Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice was absolutely dominating target share. He is the new slant boy, Michael Thomas. It's his role, and he's going to do great in it. And I'm starting Isaiah Pacheco too. He still runs angry, still got the workload. 18 opportunities, 17 touches. So I'm going to start him. I'm going to go on the fence about Xavier Worthy. I'm just going down all of KC right now. I'm going to go on the fence for Xavier Worthy. Obviously, had the little jet sweep touchdown, hauled in a deep touchdown, or a fairly deep touchdown reception where he snuck behind the offense in a broken or the secondary in a broken coverage. But we only saw 3 targets for him and 2 receptions. And if you take out that broken touchdown play, he doesn't have a bad day, but it's not blowing out of proportion like it is. So I want to see more from him.
That's fair. We have a question in the chat from Rock Out. Tua or Purdy? Tua is playing tonight, or Brock Purdy against Minnesota? Probably leaning Purdy in this one. Unfortunately, as a Dolphins fan, I think I'm leaning Purdy. Tua doesn't do well against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Purdy. I think Miami is gonna have to throw it a little bit more, but I feel like Purdy's a little bit more solidified production. You know exactly what you're getting out of him.
It's a safer play.
Yeah, Tua can kind of be up and down.
Tua averages like 12 points a game versus Buffalo, but he also has that upside to put up 25 tonight. But Purdy, I think, will give you a safe 18 to 19, 20 fantasy points in this week against Minnesota.
Yeah.
All right. Quickly go over to the Bengals real quick.
Yeah. I'm going to start Joe Burrow. I'm going to start Jamar Chase. It wasn't the greatest week 1 for either of them. More Joe Burrow than Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase obviously didn't live up to the contract that he's asking for. But yeah, Joe Burrow was accurate. He didn't do anything crazy statistically, only 164 yards on 21 completions. And then I'm gonna start Zach Moss.
Okay.
Did pop up on the injury report, had a full practice, but they said something about a neck injury to him today. As long as it's a full practice, I am just gonna think that maybe he slept wrong and his neck felt weird today. But we saw him take the bulk of the touches out of the backfield. He was the starter. He was listed as RB1. So I'm going to take him to lead this Bengals team. And then we'll go on the fence about T. Higgins, considering that he might not even play.
Yeah.
Missed practice still for that hamstring. So
again,
we're going to put him on the fence just for the fact that he might not even play. And then really, that's kind of where I'm at in terms of fence and starters.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Chase Brown, I'm kind of okay not playing at all. Mike Gesicki, I'll leave off the bench, but don't be surprised if he has to end up having a good week. Because I think the Bengals will have to throw the ball. I'm going to put Andres. I can't even say his name.
Andre I.
Yeah, he might end up. He was the high. I think he had to play 100% of the snaps. So give me that opportunity if he can possibly see on the field there. But yeah, this was a nice breakdown here, Tyler.
So we got official word hour and a half before the game. Devon Achane is officially active.
He sure is, and I love that for Miami. They need that. So go Achane, start Achane, take the risk. That's all I can tell you. Take the risk. It's worth it. Sunday Night Football, Bears, Houston Texans here. I'll give this one to you real quick because you are a Texans fan. So quickly go through this. We only got a few more minutes left.
Yeah, we're going to go prime time. I'm going Houston. You're starting CJ Stroud, starting Joe Mixon, starting Nico, starting Stephon, starting Tank, right? We're starting the offense. Last week, we did see everyone get a little piece of their pie. Tank Dell was the offensive player that sort of fell a little more flat. He had 7 targets. He had, I want to say, if I remember the stats right, over 100 intended air yards, but only walked away 3 receptions for 40 yards. But we saw Stephon Diggs. He's our short guy. He's going to get in there, especially in the red zone. He's that first look for CJ. Ended up with 2 touchdowns. Nico Collins, they're going to throw the ball downfield. He's still a dog. And Joe Mixon, honestly, surprised me and surprised a lot of people last week. Going out 159 yards on the ground, 30 carries and a touchdown. Just that usage was crazy. And then 3 receptions out of the backfield for 19 yards. Big fan of this entire offense. Obviously, kind of like we talked about with Green Bay, if they would have had Jordan Love, it's somewhat a Russian roulette of one of these guys could really boom and one of them could not. But at the same time, CJ showed that he was going to spread the ball around well. We saw 8 targets for Nico Collins. We saw 6 for Stephon Diggs, and then we saw the 7 for Tank Dell. So it's getting spread around. Dalton Schultz, I'm going to put him as on the fence just because he hadn't practiced either day this week with an ankle injury. That's not what you want to see. And then Chicago, really the only one I'm going to start is DJ Moore.
Smart.
I think that the Texans defense is better than the Tennessee defense. And that's not just me being a homer. But the Texans defense did look good against the Colts. They did allow some big plays. But Allen has missed practice both days with his injury. It's projected that Roma Dunze is not going to play this week. And so I think if Caleb Williams is going to throw the ball and go out there and try and show up on prime time, literally in his second game of his career, then he's going to have to do it through DJ Moore. And so the only bear I'm really starting is DJ Moore. I'll go on the fence about DeAndre Swift just because of the fact that there's so many potential weapons through the air missing that they might have to run the ball more. But yeah, I'm going to sit Caleb Williams, not overly excited for what he could do, especially after putting up 93 yards as the wonderkin that he was supposed to be.
I like it. I like the breakdown. Houston's going to win. You got to get a nice, good Sunday night football game. Yeah. Cole Kmet said, Khalil Herbert said, Cole Kmet could be interesting if both Allen and Odunze are out. But again, I think the OC said that he messed up not getting Cole Kmet more involved in the offense. So if those guys are out, he may become interesting. And then Monday Night Football. Atlanta Falcons versus the Philadelphia Eagles here. This one's a lot of fun here. Obviously, you start Jalen Hurts. You start Barkley. You start A.J. Brown. You start Devonta Smith. Trying to think of Dallas Goedert. He's probably more on the fence. I'm not like wanting to start him, but he's a fine start if you need him to be in the offense there. Those are the big guys on that side. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty much on the fence. I mean, Bijan's a must start. A must start. Obviously, he had the workload in week 1. He led the team in targets and in carries on the ground there in that backfield. So he's a must start player. The rest of the guys for me are kind of on the fence. Like if you're going to start Kyle Pitts, you're going to start Kyle Pitts. He's probably the only guy, but like I'm still concerned. He only had 3 targets and he had a touchdown that was late in the game here. Drake London, poor performance. Hopefully having a bounce back game from him. And then Kirk Cousins always plays bad against the Eagles, so I'm really concerned about playing Kirk Cousins. He just never stops playing them in week 2 of the season here. So, this one's interesting trade here from Chaka. Should I trade Deontay Johnson for Brock Bowers? Absolutely.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what the team looks like, but yeah. If
you need a tight end, trade for Brock Bowers. Yeah, Deontay Johnson's not going to be the 180 target guy we all think he was supposed to be here. But that's most of this Monday Night Football game here. There's no one else really concerning. Like Darnell Mooney, like Ray McLeod had some interesting targets, but I'm not starting him. So like this is basically it for the Monday night game. Start your Eagles, start Bijan Robinson, and that's really about it, guys. Here, so
the drum beat for Michael Penix is going to go crazy after Monday Night Football. That's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely,
and they should start him.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap us up for the night. We appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening. There's a lot of fun breaking this down. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed our little faster approach to this, getting you guys as much information about every single player that's playing, and hopefully week 2 that we could get for you guys. Coach Tyler, is there anything you want to say before we head out for the night?
Yeah, continue to go check out Dynasty Nerds. Obviously, me and Coach Steve talk about it a lot. We both write there. Coach Steve does these amazing articles week to week that he's putting out, and I throw in a lot more on the Debbie side throughout draft season. But yeah, go check it out. Use code COACH once you're over there. Get into the Dynasty GM, Dynasty Film Room, all that kind of good stuff, and good luck in week 2.
Yep. Tyler, we have a question in the chat here. Do I trade? I think that's Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels, yeah.
For Drake London, Charbonnet, it looks like, and Matthew Stafford. I have Kenneth Walker, Fields, and Puka, and Garrett Wilson here. So you're obviously getting rid of Jaden Daniels. You're adding Matthew Stafford. You're replacing Puka with Drake London, and you're obviously getting yourself a nice handcuff with Kenneth Walker if he obviously misses any time, who isn't practicing this week. So how do you feel about that trade?
It doesn't excite me, especially just with what we've seen from Jane Daniels rushing at least 1 week through. But I think it's a good strategic move going into the rest of the season with injuries that are popping up already.
Yeah. Like I think like I really want to have Jaden Daniels because the upside he offers, but like the way you're looking at your team right now and trying to actually strategically last the entire season, like having Drake London fill in for Puka, that's great. You have someone there. Hopefully he kind of bounces back, which he should. You have that insurance at running back, and then Stafford's fine. I think he's a fine quarterback who will give you borderline QB1 upside every week. You might not have top 5 upside every week, but our QB1 upside most weeks. So you should be pretty fine with that. I think it's a solid trade. Again, it sucks giving up Jaden Daniels at rushing upside, but having your team kind of be more filled for your starting lineup, which looks like you may need some players, it's a solid trade. And again, we appreciate you all for tuning in and listening. Hopefully you guys enjoyed our show tonight here. We had a lot of fun doing this. Again, we'll be back every Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking. Yeah, he has Justin Fields too. Justin Fields might not start though. I think Russ will, eventually take the job back. I really do. That's the way they talk about it. Is like, it seems like they're just waiting for Russ to get healthy before he takes the job back. So I wouldn't be shocked if he loses his starting job, Fields at least, in the next couple of weeks. So he'd have to really overperform if that's the case. Like he's not. He's just barely. He's surviving for this team. But we'll be back every Thursday. Mondays we'll be on as well, talking waiver wires at some point. Don't usually know when, but we'll be talking waivers at some point. So we thank you guys all for listening. Tune in until next time, guys. Thank you all for listening. And you guys all have a great one.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of Clark Kents. I've been feeling super duper. How the heck they know the future? Come with me, don't be a loser. Grass is green like Cooper.